listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. One of our biggest worries as parents right now is what our kids are doing online and the time they're spending on screens and devices. We're always on the lookout for new apps, tools, and products that will make this whole screen time battle just a little easier. I had the chance to talk to Kurt Beidler, the general manager of kids and family for Amazon, and thought this was a great opportunity to get some insider information. So we'll obviously be talking about some Amazon products and tools today, but I want to make sure you know this is not a sponsored episode. It was a really great chance to talk to the people behind these tools that are supposed to keep our kids safe, so I jumped on it. Kurt is the guy behind products like the Fire Kids Edition tablet, as well as Amazon Free Time Tools and Parent Dashboard. We talked about some of the ways to make the internet and digital devices safer places for our kids. Lots of great info packed in this one. Enjoy. Today we're talking to Kurt Beidler. Kurt is the general manager of kids and family for Amazon. He's passionate about harnessing technology for learning and other positive outcomes. He and his team have worked to develop Amazon's parental controls suite that we're going to talk about today, as well as all the other parts of the deep, dark web. Welcome to the podcast, Kurt.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be here.
Before we get too deep on that dark web, we need to find out a little bit more about you. So talk to me. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Here's the thing. I always hear Pennsylvania and I hear Pittsburgh. I know it's in Pennsylvania. When I hear Pittsburgh, all I picture is like a very gray, kind of gloomy day and people wearing trench coats. I don't know if that's from a movie somewhere, but can you just sell me on Pennsylvania for just a minute?
Yeah, Pennsylvania is amazing. I grew up actually on the other end of the state. So if you know Philadelphia, I grew up in the countryside about 2 hours north of Philadelphia, a little town called Easton, which is where Larry Holmes is from.
So we asked a question of all our guests, and it is, what was your ratatouille as a child? So it's a nod to the movie Ratatouille, and basically it's what's the sight or the taste or the sense or sound that takes you back to being a kid. What is it that takes you back to growing up in like that countryside of Pennsylvania?
Well, I would have to say it's one of two things. It's either the smell of wood smoke, which is very common in that part of the country, or it's the smell of cooking scrapple. Do you know what scrapple is?
No.
It's a wonderful pork product that is a staple in that part of the country, and it's really delicious.
So like, is it related or in the family of Spam?
Oh, no, it's unrelated. It's not a canned meat. It's a freshly made product, and everybody sort of has their homemade recipe. So if you have it in different restaurants or different homes, it always tastes a bit different. More analogous probably to something like meatloaf.
Okay. I love it. Do you have a signature scrapple recipe?
I don't. No, I actually buy it and fry it myself.
Well, this may be something we need to explore on the food category on todaysmama.com, is experiencing scrapple and then finding the best recipe for it.
I recommend it.
You've traveled a bunch with your family and you mentioned that you love Airbnb. Can you hit me with your favorite Airbnb finds?
Yeah, I've had a number of wonderful Airbnbs all over the world, actually. I think one of the top ones that comes to mind was in downtown Barcelona. And we just had a wonderful time living there. It was a place that was really decked out with lots of personal things, included a bunch of toys and books and things that were, local from Barcelona. And my kids and I just had a fantastic time. We went to a cooking class. We cooked some of our own meals in the Airbnb and really got immersed in the culture of Barcelona as opposed to just, going to restaurants all the time and living in a hotel.
Yes, I too have stayed in an Airbnb in Barcelona and it was fantastic, except for the part where they don't have elevators. We had like the tiniest stairway and I'm wiggling my luggage up it. That was painful, but an excellent workout.
Yeah, I think we had a fourth floor walk up as well. But again, it's part of the surprise. You never know what you're going to get, right?
I like that part of the surprise. So there's a windmill that I would like to stay in. I think it's in Denmark. And there's a gypsy wagon in the south of France that I have my eye on. Is there anything on your Airbnb wish list?
I've always thought that a treehouse in rural Washington state would be an amazing thing to do. And I haven't, there's a number of them. I haven't quite picked out which one, but that's definitely on the list.
Oh my gosh, my next note was that I have a big list of tree houses that I'd like to hit up in the US. I will share my wish list on Airbnb with you. There's some cool ones in Washington that I have on my list.
Please do. That's exciting.
Tree houses are a far cry from the rest of what we're going to talk about, but we are going to make all this technology stuff almost just as exciting as a fantastic treehouse. With all the latest news, I think it's safe to say that parents are freaking out. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here because I want to talk more on the proactive end of things, the stuff we can do as parents. But the headlines that have been coming in hard and fast are not only about the dangers of too much screen time and everything that goes with that, but there's also been a number of concerning headlines directed to YouTube and YouTube kids out there. So, Kurt, as we jump into this whole topic, what would you say the state of the internet is for kids today?
Well, there are a lot of things out there, obviously. I mean, I've lived through this because I've got two kids and, one of them's in college now, but the other one is still in high school. And I remember back to when my oldest was, I think, around 11 or 12. And what happened in our household is that the school required that we give computers, laptops actually, to each kid who was going to the school. And it was completely with an educational goal in mind, of course. They wanted kids to lean into technology, they wanted to use various tools in the classroom and so on. And I don't think they had fully thought through all of the repercussions of that decision. And this is 2010, this is pretty early. And I think they've since actually changed that policy. But that really opened a whole can of worms for our household. And we started talking with our son about, how much time he was spending on that and things that he was discovering or not discovering. And so that's kind of how my journey on this whole thing started.
And I think another one of these things that hopefully in the next couple years will change is in our school, cell phones are allowed throughout the day. And there's so much information and studies that show that when kids have a cell phone with them in school, their focus is impaired, their grades drop. But we can't seem to convince our local school that maybe kids shouldn't have their cell phones at junior high. I think that's another thing that will start to turn some light bulbs on is how much we're actually, having kids utilize a cell phone or making it okay in their classes to have it out.
Yeah, I think there's a wide variety, diversity of opinions on that topic. And I think the one thing that's important for parents to remember is that they're in control, right? So they need to set the policies that are important to them and their particular value system or household. And they need to talk to their kids about that. So their kids are along for the journey and on board with whatever policies or restrictions they're trying to set up.
And I like this. I like that you're saying there's a wide variety of opinions. So are you seeing anything on the flip side that's saying cell phones are helpful in the classroom?
Well, just anecdotally from talking to parents, I mean, my job is to build tools for parents, and so we talk to many thousands of parents, and parents who use our products send us feedback, and it's very clear from all of the research that we do and the feedback that we get from our parents that parents don't feel the same way on all of these things, right? There are some parents who feel that things should be wide open and in-app purchases should be, enabled and so on and so forth, and there are other parents on the other end of the spectrum. I think a lot of parents are in between. So what we try to do is build a set of tools that are completely configurable so the parents can use them to support whatever policies are important in their household.
And that's also an important point, and one we talk about quite a bit is screen time rules and technology rules are going to look different in every household. And even more frustrating, they will likely look different for every kid in your household, right? I can tell you that, my 10th grade son and my ninth grade daughter have very different habits and interests and, the places that they get sucked into on the internet. My son can waste hours and hours on the ESPN Sports Zone. My daughter's text threads can light up the household. So, we have to look at kids individually as well for how we set up their environments, right?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've got two and they're as different as night and day. I've got friends with four or five, and each one of them are different as well. So it has to be completely custom. You have to respond to the individual needs of the individual child.
Well, so let's talk about some of the tools that Amazon has available. So, first, let's start with the fact that you guys have the Fire Kids Edition tablet. Tell me about that product.
Yeah, so the Fire Kids Edition tablet is a bundle of a bunch of different things that we sell individually as well. It's got a case that protects it. It's like a foam bumper. It has an extended guarantee, so if anything happens in 2 years, we'll replace it for free. And it comes bundled with two software products. One is Amazon FreeTime, which is our suite of parental controls, and we actually make that available on all tablets, and it's always free. So you don't have to buy the Kids Edition to get that, but it does come bundled with the Kids Edition. And it also comes with 1 year of Free Time Unlimited, which is our content subscription service. Free Time Unlimited has over 20,000 kids' videos, apps, books, games, and so forth that we curate for kids.
Tell me about the curation process. How did that library of content come together?
Yeah, we've been doing this for years. We obviously have a lot of underlying content stores. So, Amazon has an ebook store, so we know what the best ebooks for kids are, for example. We also have an app store, so we know what apps are popular. And similarly for video and Audible and other media types. And so we can build on a lot of the sales data that we have. We also partner with Common Sense Media. We talk and partner with a lot of content providers in the industry. So anybody who has good content for kids in any of those categories, like Disney, Nickelodeon, of course, on the larger end, but including also a lot of small independent writers and builders as well. And we'll go out and license their content. And, it's a lot of stuff that's really popular with kids that you might recognize. With the apps in particular, though, we take an extra step, which is we have the app developer remove any links to social media, any in-app purchasing, and any ads. And so the versions of the apps that exist in Free Time Unlimited are actually only exist in Free Time Unlimited. You won't find them anywhere else. You'll find other versions of them, but they most likely include in-app purchasing, ads, or links to social media.
I love that. Now, is there a browser on the Kids Edition tablet?
Yeah, free time, the free product, the parental controls suite, does actually include a selection of web videos and websites that we curate for kids. And parents are free to add to that list as well. It's very different from any other product that's out there. It's not a web browser with a blacklist that, tries in a whack-a-mole fashion to keep out the bad stuff. This is actually a whitelist model. So we maintain a list of websites and videos that we decide are appropriate for kids and not commercial and age appropriate. And we whitelist those into the product. And parents can then supplement that with their school's website or any website that they deem is relevant to their kids.
I'm going to ask the skeptical question, right? Is there any way a kid can break through that outside of you as a parent adding some additional whitelisted websites? Is there any way a kid can hack through that and end up in some dark place of the internet or on that device with those parental controls?
No, there's not. And that's the beauty of a whitelisting approach to this. When you have a blacklist where you're using an algorithm or a list of profanity or whatever your approach is, you're always going to miss things or things are going to slip through because they're masquerading as something else. In a whitelist approach, a human actually looks at every single thing that's adding, whether that human is one of us or whether it's your parent or you as the parent. And so it's impossible for anything to get in there that shouldn't be there unless, you make a human error.
Now, you can also, like any other parental controls, set time limits. What does that look like on the parental controls?
Yeah, so we've taken I think, an innovative approach to screen time limits. We don't think that all screen time is created equal. So we have not just, limits generally. And that is an option, actually. If a parent wants to do that, that is available. But we have another option, which is you can set screen time limit by activity. So you can set, for example, unlimited reading, but only 30 minutes of games and an hour of video, or something to that effect, whatever you think is appropriate for your particular child.
Tell me about the Learn First feature because I thought that was really cool also.
Yeah, thanks. Learn First is a very popular feature with parents. And what it allows parents to do is to set up an educational goal for their child, and then free time, the software will actually enforce that goal. So, for example, if you set up a 30 minutes a day reading goal, what we will do, what Amazon Free Time, the software will do, is actually hide all of the other content until that goal has been met. And the child sees the little countdown. And so after the child has actually spent 30 minutes reading, and they have to actually read a book, the videos and books and other media types will then become available again.
Absolutely love that. And then just a side note plug for Audible, which I'm assuming Audible, basically all of those products are the appropriate products are available on Amazon Free Time. Is that right?
We were super excited only a few months ago, actually, it's still relatively recent, to add a selection of over 1,000 Audible books to Amazon Free Time Unlimited. So anybody who either subscribes on a monthly basis to Free Time Unlimited or just gets the Kids Edition tablet, which comes with a year of Free Time Unlimited, they will have unlimited access to over 1,000 Audible books, all age appropriate for kids 2 through 12.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
If you're enjoying this topic today, might I recommend a few others from the archive? Check out one of our recent interviews, episode 30, with Lisa Thee, all about the latest YouTube headlines and what you can do to keep your kids safe. Check out episode 16 with Naomi Riley, author of Be the Parent Please, Stop Banning Seesaws and Start Banning Snapchat. You can also listen to our 3-part Tech Reset series, which is episodes 7, 8, and 9. They're short, 15 minutes or less episodes on some of the screen time rules that have helped the most at our house. All those links will be in the show notes, and I think that'll keep you busy for a while. You can find all those links and more at todaysmama.com/podcast.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
So Audible, I am a super fan of because I had my youngest did not love reading, was not a big reader. And we started doing the Harry Potter Audible books, which are so good. And that got her hooked on stories and books and turned into an actual real love of physically turning pages of a book. And over time, I just have read a lot that says that listening to a book is actually still building some really great neural pathways in their brain and reinforcing a lot of the skills needed for reading, and a really great thing for kids to do if they're struggling. So even my 9th grader reading A Tale of Two Cities, that's been a treat. Her teacher at parent-teacher conferences recommended, hey, listen to the Audible version and open your book and read along at the same time. When you do those two things together, there's a huge value for your brain.
That makes complete sense. We also have something called a reading app inside Free Time Unlimited as well. We've got, for example, the complete Dr. Seuss series, kind of build that experience together, exactly what you just described, into one app. And so the child can, read along with the book. They can listen to the book while the words light up. There are a number of different modes, but it really brings together that experience of listening to a story being told and then also, being able to follow along with the words on the screen.
Yeah, love it. I just think we sit over here and get afraid. There's a lot of really cool things that can add to and enhance our kids' experiences, right? And I think, Audible and tools like that for reading are huge examples of that. So let's talk about some other topics when it comes to kids and digital safety. Privacy. So privacy is a big deal. Our data is being gathered everywhere we go. What should we be concerned about for our kids, and what are we overreacting to when it comes to the data that's just kind of scooped up from us digitally every day?
Yeah, again, I think that's a topic that there's a wide diversity of opinion on that. Some parents seem to care a lot about it and some parents don't. We meet the standard of the parents who care a lot about it. So we obviously don't do anything with that data. Our products are 100% COPPA compliant. It is a paid service, Free Time Unlimited or the Kids Edition tablet. People pay for these products. And so it's not an ad-supported business model in any way. And so at least from our standpoint, whatever data is kept is completely transparent. Parents are in control, and it's not used for anything that they wouldn't want it to be used for.
So this hits on a really important topic to me. So much of the internet is free. So YouTube is free, right? And our ability to expect or demand something additional from them is a little impeded because of that. But when you are using a paid service, a subscription service, you're paying for those extra boundaries or the curation and the service oriented piece of that. So it doesn't have to be ad supported. So anybody out there who says, oh, well, I can find all this content somewhere else for free, I would say you also get what comes with a free platform, which is that you've got a lot of people that, or maybe I'm going to back that up and say that's more of a blacklist model, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. That's a choice that, consumers have to make, and they either make it consciously or unconsciously, depending on how much they're aware of it. But when you do pay for a premium product, you do have the right to demand, certain features, and I think privacy is definitely one of those.
So when we say, does Amazon gather any data from kids? You say it's COPPA compliant. You're not serving ads, so there's nothing you would do with that data. But you probably are, by the nature of them using a device, that creates a digital footprint, and that is data that you do collect.
Well, only to a very limited degree. I mean, there's certain things that we need to store in order to improve the experience. So, for example, you use the Audible example. If you pick up, the next day listening to an Audible book, you want to be able to pick up where you left off. You don't want to have to start from scratch every single time you open that Audible book, right? And so we need to remember where you were when you last listened to it. What happens in free time stays in free time. That data doesn't go anywhere. It's not used for anything, but it is necessary in order to make that experience, good for the child. We don't collect any personal or identifiable information or anything like that from the kids. Parents are also completely in control. So Amazon Parent Dashboard is a place where parents can go to see what their kids are doing. And if they don't like what they see, for example, how much time their kids are spending on a certain activity, they can adjust that remotely. So they can just go in and adjust the time limits, adjust the bedtime, add or remove content, and so on and so forth from the Amazon Parent Dashboard. And so, that is important to parents to be able to connect with their kids and to know what's going on. And so again, in order to deliver on that promise to parents, we need to actually, have that data available.
So, can we talk about our girl Alexa?
Of course.
Okay. And let's talk about home assistants in general, or is that what we're calling them, home assistants?
That is one word for them, yeah.
What information is she gathering while she's sitting in our kitchen?
Well, there's a common misconception that she's always listening. She's only listening for one thing, and that's her what we call a wake word. So, you can set up to 4 different wake words. So Alexa is the default, but you can also set, Amazon or computer, for example, as the wake word. And she's only programmed to listen for her wake word. When she hears that, then she listens for whatever command you're trying to give her.
I feel like there's been stories out there about whether it was a Google Home or Alexa responding not to awake words, right? Have there been tweaks and changes that have been made over time, or where is that stuff stemming from?
Well, I mean, just from my own experience, I have multiple Alexa devices in my house. And so I have different wake words for them. And so, one of them is Amazon. So when I want to talk to that one, I use Amazon as the wake word, and another one is computer, and another one is Alexa. And it's not uncommon that I will use Amazon in a sentence or computer in a sentence, without the intention of actually trying to wake her up. But that's on me. I did actually use that word, and she did recognize it. It's kind of on us to understand how it works and then to choose a wake word that maybe we're not going to be using in a common sentence so that it doesn't trigger a false wake.
Okay, now when we have awoken or awaken Alexa, what do you do with the data or the interaction that happens then?
Well, so as a customer, you give her a command. So you wake her up, you give her a command. That command then, goes to our server, and then we process the command and try to deliver whatever it is that you're asking her to do, whether that's, play a song or play the news or do something interactive like a skill.
So, do you retarget ads at all based on your interactions with Alexa in your home?
For kids, absolutely not.
How does Alexa know the difference?
Well, we've built the kids version, so there's a
So, meaning it wouldn't flow over into the kids' platform because you're not going to see ads there. Sorry, my brain took a minute to catch up on that one.
No, that's okay. So, the Echo Dot Kids edition is built from the ground up for kids, just like our kids' tablet. And so, it's built in a similar way. Parents are completely in control. So they set up the device under their account into a child's profile. And then we know that everything coming through that device is from that child, and it's protected and treated with the appropriate way, just like it would be, on our tablet. It's great, and it does, I think, exactly what parents, would want it to do. So, for example, things like shopping are disabled, access to news and other things which you might not want your kids to have access to are disabled. There's tons of amazing kids content that's included in Free Time Unlimited in the kids edition. For example, kids music, obviously the kids audible books, and a whole range of nearly 100 exclusive kids experience in skills. You know what skills are?
No.
So a skill on Alexa is kind of like an app on your phone. So anything that you can imagine that an app would do, there's usually a skill for it as well. And there's skills generally on Alexa. But what we've done in the kids edition is we've actually worked with our partners who develop kids content to develop exclusive, amazing kids experiences. And, there are things like animal yoga, freeze dance, trivia games for kids, educational experiences where kids there's one called Name That Animal, where Alexa gives you clues about a certain animal and the kids have to guess what the animal is. So, entertaining, educational, and just really, really fun. There's thousands of hours of stuff that kids can do inside the kids' Alexa.
Have you seen Lego Batman?
The movie?
Yes.
I have not seen it yet.
Dang it, it's totally aside. So for any of our listeners who've seen Lego Batman summons his computer by calling her Pewter, Puter, in his deep Lego Batman voice. If I had an Amazon Alexa in my house, I think that's what I would make my wake word be. You will appreciate this more when you go do your homework this weekend and watch Lego Batman.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's talk about the most important parental controls out there. And parents, obviously, that is you. So I'm not overemphasizing this when I say that we talk about technology every day in some way, shape, or form at our house. Like I just did a quick mental review, and I can tell you in the last 24 hours, we have discussed an email that came home from the high school about an incident where somebody took a video of someone else in the locker room. You know, we make our kids listen to podcasts to pay their cell phone bills. So last night we talked about an episode of Oprah's Super Soul podcast with Karen Armstrong, which I would highly recommend, and about life as a nun. We wouldn't have had that conversation without podcasts. We had a conversation about the YouTube headlines that have been out this week. And I reinforced again my commitment to my kids that I will not freak out if they see something bad and that we can always talk about it. I had to remind my kids that they needed to turn in their phones to be charged before they went to bed. And I had to banish a phone from the dinner table. This stuff is not going away. So all of these conversations were just had in passing. None of these moments were big, heavy family meeting moments. This is just the touch points about how we're interacting with technology on a regular basis. So you've got some great tips on this topic and about some of these touch points that we have with our kids. I've got 4 for you that I'm going to read back to you, and then I want your take. So your tip number 1 is that you're a big advocate of playing an active role in kids' digital experiences. So what does that look like?
Well, I think for starters, you need to create space to have the conversation. And one of the things that you just mentioned, which is definitely a hard and fast rule in my household, is device-free dinner. When everybody, including the parents, turn off their devices and take them away from the dining table, you create space for that conversation. And then you can use that conversation to really talk about these kids. And I also liked what you said about not in a big sort of ominous family meeting sort of setting, but just, hey, what are you doing on your phone lately? Or why are you into that game? Or do you ever see something, on the internet that scares you? Or, just have these casual conversations frequently. And part of that continuous conversation with kids, I think, is really, really critical.
Yes, and it's just has to be ongoing and safe, because if you lose your mind, they are going to think twice about the next time they come to tell you about that dark corner of the internet that they wandered down by accident or on purpose. You don't know, but you have to be a safe place for that.
That's right. You have to earn their trust. And if they confide in you and you freak out, then maybe they're not going to confide in you next time.
Okay, tip number 2, giving kids room to explore and peace of mind for parents. How does that work? How do we have peace of mind as parents?
Well, we've kind of designed our product, so Amazon Free Time and Free Time Unlimited, around that very principle. And so we talk about it as kind of a walled garden, and it really is analogous to the walled garden that you might have, in a physical world. If you have a fence around your backyard and you allow your child to have complete freedom within that area, and they can run around, they can climb the tree, they can, dig a hole and build things, complete freedom to discover things and learn and play. But you also know that they can't get out of that fence and just, run down the street, for example. And so free time creates that walled garden experience. The parent creates the child profile. They set up the guardrails, or that, whether that's time limits, educational goals, whatever it is. And then either the parent adds content in or they add free time unlimited, which gives the child access to, all of the wonderful things out there. And the child then is in complete control and they decide what they're going to spend the time on. If they're going to read, they're into that. They're going to spend their time reading. If they're going to do something else, they're really in control, as opposed to somebody else saying, you must do this at this time.
And I just honestly have to say that I'm loving the fact that the paranoia can leave. The whitelist approach has blown my mind,
Yeah.
because in the back of our minds as parents, that walled garden always seems to be built with a trap door in all the devices and experiences and news that, we're hearing and having. And so that part is really compelling to me.
And we've even made the background blue. And so, the only way for the child to exit free time or exit their profile is if they know the parent's PIN. which you as a parent should obviously never tell your child. But if they do learn your PIN somehow and they exit, you will immediately be able to see because the background will no longer be blue. And so you can really hand the device to your child, walk away, not hover all the time, which is something that parents tell us over and over again. They want to be safe, they want to have that peace of mind, but they don't want to hover, and they don't want to be the bad person who's always looking over the shoulder and taking the device away. You can actually do that by just setting up the limits, trusting that we'll enforce those limits, and you're good to go.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
Let's talk about another one of our very favorite parental control apps, Bark. Bark's affordable, award-winning service proactively monitors text messages, YouTube, emails, and 24 different social networks for potential safety concerns, so busy parents can save time and gain peace of mind. 2.5 million children are protected by Bark. 16 school shootings have been prevented, verified by the FBI, and 10,000 severe self-harm situations have been detected. Use the code Today's Mama to get 10% off your account for the life of your account. That adds up. You can check it all out at bark.us.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
Okay, tip number 3, and this is actually something I say all of the time. So parent involvement is going beyond set it and forget it. We all want to say, can't there just be an app for that, right? So talk about that. What is our parent involvement at that level?
I think all tools are supporting, they play supporting roles. So, the idea that you could just find the right tool, set it up, and then give it to your child without talking to them about it, I think is probably not going to work very well. What worked for me, at least, is when I started with a conversation. Hey, I think there's some really good stuff here, Marcus. I think you might like to really enjoy this. I'd like to give it to you. But before we do this, I want to talk about my expectations and what you think would be appropriate. And I actually asked him, I said, how much time do you think would be appropriate to spend per day? He was like 9 years old at the time. And his answer was something like, I think if I did the dishes and all my chores for the day, I should be allowed half an hour of game time, which was a great start. I think we wound up extending that a little bit. But my point is, if you actually involve the kids in that decision early on, as opposed to just dictating what it should be, they're more invested and they understand kind of why the policies that we're setting up are the way that they are. And if they want to renegotiate those policies at any point, they will. Like Marcus very quickly came to the point where, maybe half an hour wasn't quite enough. What if I had an hour on the weekends and half an hour on weekdays? Okay, great. Let's try that. As kids grow up and evolve, their needs change. They need different pieces of content, they need different bedtimes and so on. And so it's just a constant ongoing conversation. And the software tools without the conversation will not be sufficient.
So I want to scream like an amen and hallelujah, because as you said that, this is one of my favorite conversations to have with parents and kids. So I talk about screen time quite a bit to like high school, junior high kids, parent groups. And one exercise I inevitably run people through is to say, first of all, let's ask our kids, how much time do you want to spend? Because even, my 16-year-old son, when I ask him, hey, bud, how much time do you want to spend in a day? His answer was 45 minutes. And I said, okay, let's get our phones out. Now let's do the inventory. How much time are you spending? For some kids, it's 3 hours, some it's 5, some it's 9, right?
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all across the board. But when you ask them before we go down that rabbit hole, their intention and what they want and how they really see themselves spending time is not to be stuck where they're stuck. So if we start asking, where do you want to be? They're bought into that vision, and part of the conversation, they're helping steer the ship. And they are so much more willing and likely to participate without giving you so much resistance.
I agree. And I would again reiterate that all screen time is not equal. And so in addition to, how much time kids think they should be spending with their devices, I would also ask them about goals. What are your goals for the summer? What are your goals for this weekend? Should we have a reading goal? and to think about, what they're trying to achieve in addition to just how much time they're spending.
Yep. And you know what? Other things like at our house, I am totally fine for my kids to talk on the phone as much as they want. Because if they're talking and communicating and not texting, I'm just like, great, you are learning some communication skills. I don't care if you're on the phone for 2 hours while you're doing your chores or wandering around or whatever. So at our house, we've decided, those minutes still count towards their screen time on their phone, for instance, but I don't care about those ones. You know, I care about where they got stuck in like a dumb game or an eternal scroll of news that they didn't need to spend that much time there or whatever it may be. But there's certain things like talking to each other or podcasts or you're mentioning some really good reading tools that I simply don't have a problem with, right? Like if my 10-year-old wants to listen to Audible for an hour, amen and hallelujah, right? I'm usually laying on the couch next to her listening because they're so good.
I agree. We're also seeing that parents feel very differently about how kids spend time on Alexa. And so the kids Alexa that we just talked about, does have podcasts, and some of the skills are incredibly educational and interactive, like choose your own adventure story, where you actively sort of listening to a story, but then at every turn you get to engage with that story and decide, are you going to go this way or go that way? And the story evolves depending on what your inputs are. And those are very interactive, social, challenging, educational experiences, not just sort of, vegging out in front of the TV, for example.
Yes, yes. All screen time is not created equal. All right, now your fourth tip is balancing control with conversation and content. And I think we've been talking, that's kind of been a thread of what we've been talking about there. But is there anything else you want to expand on there?
I guess the one thing that I would expand upon is really the content side of it, because there is a lot of conversation about, the bad stuff and the fear and, the time limits and all those sorts of things. And those are all important things. But I think we all recognize as parents as well that there's an incredible upside to all the amazing things that kids can learn. And we do hear from parents over and over again that they do want their kids to have technology and to learn technology and to learn how to be independent and build good habits with technology. And the only way that you can do that is if you also look at the content side of it and make sure that your kids have access to all of the right stuff, all of the good stuff.
I often think about this like a healthy diet analogy. So every day, I have to kind of think about what I'm going to eat for breakfast, what I'm going to eat for lunch, if I'm going to have that 3 o'clock snack. It's a daily practice, and I have to make conscious decisions. And the more healthy choices I make, the more that becomes a habit for me. And I think we very much have to think about technology the same way. What is in the diet? What's good for us? What's putting on the digital pounds or however we want to look at it, or giving us too much digital sugar.
Yep.
But it just has to be a daily thought process, and if we're involved with it with our kids, they're going to build healthy habits and hopefully leave our homes and be able to continue those same thought processes for themselves.
I agree. I actually personally like that analogy, the diet analogy. I struggle when using that with kids because kids can equate, if reading is eating the vegetables and playing a game is the ice cream or
Yes.
whatever, like that breaks down really quickly. So I actually steer away from using that. But I do think what you said about parents leading by example is really important. If parents are reading and listening to books and listening to podcasts and doing things that are wholesome and not touching any devices during dinner, if parents are leading by example, I think kids will follow along.
Definitely. Okay, so you said one of the things you admire about your parents is that they let you make mistakes and let you find your way through them. So I think that applies to everything we're talking about here. What did that look like at your house growing up?
Well, I grew up in the country, and so the walled garden idea, I actually didn't have walls, and so it was a fairly large backyard surrounded by forest, and so there was ample opportunity for me to discover and learn and explore. And my parents were great. They did give us certain guidelines about things, and they were protective, but they weren't overly protective. And I think part of them giving me that space to learn some things on my own, to skin my knee occasionally, and so on and so forth, I think was really valuable in my learning process.
Is there a constructive way that we can let our kids make mistakes with technology? That's a tricky question.
It is a tricky question. I mean, I think inside Free Time Unlimited, for example, kids do have choice, and there are thousands of books but there are also thousands of videos and games. And I think giving kids the experience to choose for themselves what they do and kind of see where they land is really, really healthy. And sometimes they might play a game that is, at least appears to parents, a bit frivolous. It might actually be really engaging and really educational for them at some level, but just give them the chance to sort of go through that and outgrow that. There's so much stuff in there that they will eventually find, stuff that is valuable and engaging to them. And what's useful for kids and learning for kids is not always the same things that parents would prescribe for their kids. And I think it's important for parents to sort of let go a little bit and give the kids room to actually discover those things on their own.
And I think there's a concept also of, and this is a hard one, of teaching our kids to choose between good, better, and best over time. And so it doesn't mean that, oh, you ended up in that darkest part of the internet. It's, oh, hey, like, are you using your time in the best way? What's the good, better, best, and what do you want? And I think that kind of constant reassessing is important.
Yes, and kids are also very savvy, or they become very savvy very quickly. In many ways, they're more savvy than we are when it comes to technology. But I think even when it comes to content, the good stuff rises to the top. And, the audible books that are told by a really amazing storyteller are the ones that get listened to again and again, right? So kids are pretty discriminating when it comes to content.
Yes, we have been through the Harry Potter Audible series, I think 7 full times since second grade.
There you go.
So, yeah, that the good stuff definitely rises to the top.
On Parent Dashboard, we have this thing called discussion cards, where we actually create Cliff's Notes for parents. We don't call them Cliff's Notes, obviously, but they're called discussion cards. It's a one-page summary of each piece of content that's in Free Time Unlimited. And so even if a parent might not understand why their child is really into this Toca Boca game or really in love with this particular video, parents can go to the Amazon Parent Dashboard, read the discussion card, and actually learn what our editors have said about why this piece of content is good, challenging, educational, questions you might want to ask your child, activities you might want to do with your child, and so on. So we do try to bridge that gap, that there sometimes is a gap between what a child sees as valuable and what a parent sees as valuable. We try to bridge that gap a little bit.
And I absolutely love that, because sometimes we just need, as adults and parents, we're seeing through our own lenses. We need that additional bit of insight to see why something's valuable. So, Minecraft, it completely irritated me for so long. And then I realized, I think I read something that kind of shifted my mind a little, where I was like, actually, they're building and creating things when they are playing together with their friends. And let me add, in the same room. That part's important. In the same room. I don't personally, my take is, I don't like when they're networked together from other houses on something like Fortnite. I like my kids to play their games in the same room with their friends. But that when that's happening, they're problem solving together, they're revising, they're creating. And all of a sudden I started to see Minecraft in a very different light. And I actually really love those discussion cards. I read about that and thought that was a really cool feature that you guys have added.
I had a very similar experience with Minecraft when my son was first really into it. I was worried about whether I should be allowing him to do that. And, eventually did learn exactly what you just said. And our discussion card for Minecraft actually reflects that.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, my son who's in high school will still play Minecraft with his buddies sometimes. And it's hilarious to see what they're doing and how they're working together. So I've grown an appreciation. All right. So let's end things on a high note. Kurt, what is your very favorite thing about technology? What can it do for kids and families?
I think it actually has the ability to expand horizons for people, adults and kids. It's great to be able to explore the physical world, but there's so much more out there beyond the four walls of the house that you live in or even the four walls of your backyard, right? So I think it really, in the same way that physical books did for me as a child, I think, electronic books and also games and videos and audible books and, music and so on, they just expand the horizons so much.
Yeah, I love when technology plants a seed or turns a digital experience into something tangible in the real world. So I think there's so many opportunities for that. In the same way that Audible books made my child an actual reader, right? Or that FIFA 13 turned my son into a soccer player. He didn't have a sport. He started playing FIFA 13. He learned all the rules, a love of the game. got up the courage to try out for a competition team, didn't make it, tried again and made it. I don't know that he would have got there without spending, some what I could have labeled really lazy time playing, a soccer video game. And so I think the more we can help transition our kids' digital interests and marry them together with stuff that happens in the real world, that's where the real magic is.
I think those are great examples. For my son, it was music and having access to jazz and, various composition and so on, really, I think, extended beyond what he would have ever been able to do by just playing in, for example, the middle school or high school concert band. It was really incredible for him.
So there's a world of possibility out there. And I love what a safe space you guys have created for kids to get started there, where parents can feel good. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. And actually, before I let you go, if people want to follow up with you online, where's the best place to keep in touch?
With me personally, they can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place to find me.
And then where's the best place for people to get more information about the products, Amazon Kids Suite, all the stuff that we talked about today?
If you just go to Amazon and search for Free Time or Kids Tablet or Kids Echo, all of those searches will direct you to our products.
Okay.
And if you want to go to the Amazon Parent Dashboard, it's just parents.amazon.com.
You may have talked me into the Amazon Kids Echo, Kurt. This will be a monumental thing.
Check it out.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'll be harassing you continually for you to remake my internet, but you're doing a good job so far.
Thank you, Rachel.
Here's the thing I'm convinced of. I'm convinced that we'll solve these big screen time problems we've got. We'll continue to have new tools like the ones we talked about today. We're going to continue to get smarter in our parenting, in raising our kids. It's been the wild, wild west out there, and lots of mistakes have been made. I've got a lot of hope for the future, but we've got some serious work to do. If you're in on resetting your relationship with technology, get ready for our Tech Reset Project ebook series. Just email us at hello@techresetproject.com, and we're going to hook up the first 100 of you with a free copy of the Tech Reset Project. It's an ebook packed with conversation guides, worksheets, and actionable tips to help you and your family figure out this thing in a way that works for you. Again, email us at hello@techresetproject.com, and we'll hook you up. Otherwise, be sure to check out techresetproject.com and stay tuned for the launch.
You've been listening to the Today's Mama podcast with Rachel Hersher. To find out more, go to todaysmama.com. That's todaysmama.com. Today's Mama, connecting moms and families with the best of today.